Father Vogel, we have now reached the end of our series on St. Francis de Sales' Introduction to the Devout Life. We have spent many videos going through his different parts of this book, the different chapters, to give us his different advice and guidance on how to grow in greater holiness and following what he calls the devout life. So in this final chapter, we are going to just look at some 3 final pieces of advice that he gives to us as we continue on. Because even though we have finished this series of videos, you're welcome to come back and look at different pieces of it. Like, for example, looking at specific ones about the different virtues. Because as we went through and talked about in the previous chapter, that we shouldn't try to implement everything that we read in this book all at once. That there is a progression that we're going to go through the devout life. So we can continue to go back to these things. So the 3 pieces of advice that he concludes his book with are, first, to have a kind of to be very intentional about renewing this path and following God. So he says, maybe at the beginning of each month, to renew the resolution that we've made, and even to go back and read through it. Other times that this might be helpful is when we feel drawn away by the winds of the world, the temptations, the just normal everyday activities that draw us into busyness, and that we can forget about what we're all about in being one of God's disciples. So he says we can look back and read this resolution to strengthen us in continuing on this path of holiness. So that's his first piece of advice. His second one is that whenever we are talking to others or ourselves about the fact that we've embarked upon this journey, a Christian journey, in a greater way, is not to speak of it as though we're already devout. No, he says, in humility we must admit that we want to be devout, and that's why we're doing these things, not because we already are holy. That's very important to have that kind of humility, especially when we speak of this to others, because there's going to be moments that, if we're really engaging the Lord in this way, that it's going to change our lives, and people are going to notice this change within us, maybe a spouse or family members or those that we interact with on a daily basis. And he says to be bold about not being ashamed of the fact that you're spending more time in prayer, that you're trying to work on the virtues. This is a good thing. In fact, this is a way of helping evangelize and maybe pulling others into this desire to follow the Lord in a greater way. So he says there might be times that this might be brought up in terms of the invitations that we receive from others. We might receive an invitation that maybe in the past we would have followed up on and taken part in, but because we've made this decision now, it's not going to be good for our souls to take those invitations. So maybe it's something like, well, I can't stay up and do this because I've made this commitment to make sure that I get up in the morning and pray. So those can be moments in which we might have to talk about or bring up the fact that we're trying in a greater way to be a disciple of the Lord. Of course, we don't have to bring it up in every conversation, and be kind of weird about it in that way, but whenever naturally there's a moment where it makes sense, to not be afraid, not to be ashamed of our relationship with God and our desire, not that we are devout, but that we desire to grow in holiness. So the third piece of advice that he gives in this final chapter is perseverance, to continue in this, what he says, a happy venture of the devout life. Because now that we're done with this book, we are by no means done in following the Lord. This is going to be a lifelong path and journey. Sometimes we're going to be better at it than others, but hopefully we persevere and continue. So in thinking about persevering, he says to think about our future, that each day we're closer to the end of our life here on earth. He quotes St. Gregory of Nazianzen, "Let everyone be ready for the judgment that is near." We know that we don't know exactly when Jesus will return. It could be in our lifetime or not, but we do know, that the course of our days is limited. And so we choose to work now on this relationship with God so that we will be ready whenever it is time to meet Him. He says, look up to heaven, and do not forsake it for earth. Even as part of the meditations, he says to look down to hell and not cast yourself into it for the sake of fleeting moments when we have those certain temptations. But look mostly to Jesus Christ. And so that's he's going to conclude a line that he likes to use is, live Jesus, that Jesus would live within us. So I've enjoyed going through this work of St. Francis de Sales in making these reflection videos. Hopefully you found it very helpful, and you may certainly use it as a resource to turn back to. I know that this is certainly is a resource. His work is a resource for me, not only for myself and trying to be devout, but also a resource in my continued teaching through homilies and other areas that I teach the faith. So thank you for watching these videos, and I hope that together we may each grow closer to the Lord, and so that Jesus may live within us and that we can reach our home together with Him forever. God bless.